Imagine for a second being bound to a chair in a freezing attic for 13 days.
Yeah, just unimaginable.
Right. And downstairs, ordinary men are just sitting around watching television. They've been paid to basically ignore your screams.
It's horrific.
It is. And meanwhile, the men torturing you upstairs are, they're using your phone to text your mother, telling her you're just having a great time on a business trip.
Wow.
But I think the most terrifying part of all this, the elite police unit that could potentially save you, is keeping your location a total secret from their own local homicide detectives.
Yeah, that's the part that really gets me.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you into one of Scotland's most complex, chilling, and frankly bizarre modern crimes. I mean, we're looking at the 2011 abduction and murder of 27-year-old financial advisor Lynda Spence.
And, it is a case that completely defies expectations.
Yes.
Every single person involved is living a double life.
Right.
And just when you think you understand the dynamic, the floor just drops out from under you.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a tragedy where every single character is wearing a mask. Like the victor, the killers, even the police, they're all playing this really dangerous game of pretend.
That's a great way to put it.
So we have to start with the victim, Lynda Spence. Because the woman she presented to the world, this high society elite, she didn't actually exist, did she?
Not at all. I mean, if you ran into Lynda Spence in Glasgow's affluent West End back in early 2011, you would see a highly successful, high-flying financial advisor.
Right. The whole package.
Exactly. She was 27. She threw cash around effortlessly. She stayed in luxury hotels, drank crystal champagne, drove expensive cars.
Just projecting total success.
Yes, absolute financial dominance.
Yeah.
But the reality behind all that crystal and the cars was that she was completely penniless.
Wait, really? Completely penniless?
Oh yeah, heavily in debt.
I mean, her own business partner, Tony Kelly, literally described her dealings as absolute chaos.
Yeah, she wasn't some financial wizard. She was a prolific con artist.
Wow.
She functioned largely as a facilitator of fraud.
Yeah.
Like she was well known in certain circles for providing forged documents to help people secure mortgages they definitely didn't qualify for.
They're just totally faking the paperwork.
Right. And she used, I think it was at least 20 different mobile phones over an 18-month period.
20 phones? That is insane.
Yeah, just to keep her various aliases and lies straight.
And we're not talking about petty theft here either. The sources detail how she stole £175,000 in deposits from 30 members of Glasgow's Chinese community.
Yeah, that was awful.
She set up this scheme where they thought they were buying flats in Maryhill, but she just pocketed the money. But even that wasn't her biggest con, right?
No, not by a long shot.
Her ultimate scam was the supposed land deal near Stansted Airport. Can you explain the mechanics of this?
Yeah.
Because it sounds incredibly elaborate.
It was incredibly elaborate. I mean, she approached investors promising astronomical returns. Specifically, she promised a £3.2 million return on an initial £85,000 investment.
That's just an absurd return on investment.
It is. But to prove it was real, she didn't just, use fake websites or shell companies. She produced forged Danish bearer bonds.
Okay, wait, let's pause there because I had to look this up. What exactly is a bearer bond, and why was it the perfect vehicle for this fraud?
So a bearer bond is a type of fixed income security. But unlike normal bonds or stocks, it is not registered to any specific owner.
Okay.
Whoever physically holds the paper, like the bearer, they own the bond. So because they are virtually untraceable, they're notoriously used in money laundering and tax evasion.
Right. But why Danish? Like, why so specific?
Well, that's the brilliance of it, really. Fraudsters like Lynda use highly specific, unusual details to basically bypass your critical thinking.
Oh, I see.
She claimed these specific Danish bonds were being used in a complex international transaction to legally avoid paying VAT, value-added tax.
Oh, wow. So it sounds super insider.
Exactly. It sounds exotic enough to be plausible, but obscure enough that the average investor won't know how to verify it. They hear that and think, this is a sophisticated tax loophole.
And it hooks them.
It absolutely hooks them. She even went as far as flying to North Carolina for a fake business meeting, which was so audacious it actually caught the attention of the FBI temporarily.
That's wild. But if you're dealing with millions of pounds, wouldn't you do a background check? Like, was she really a criminal mastermind, or were her victims just blinded by their own greed?
It's a bit of both, honestly. I mean, greed makes people willingly ignore massive red flags.
Yeah, I guess it's easy for us to say we'd never fall for it. But if someone promises to solve all your financial anxiety in one stroke, your brain just wants to believe it.
Exactly.
Which brings us directly to the man who swallowed that hook whole. The man who gave her that 85,000 pounds, Colin Coates.
Right.
Let's look at him because he's kind of the mirror image of Lynda. If she was pretending to be wealthy, Colin Coates used to be wealthy but was desperately pretending he still was.
What's fascinating here is the psychological profile of Colin Coates.
Mm.
I mean, he is not your stereotypical lifelong gangster.
Not at all.
He was a highly intelligent, remarkably successful IT specialist. At his peak, he was making over 200,000 pounds a year, legitimately.
Wow. Doing what?
He designed systems for the Civil Aviation Authority,
Yeah.
built complex trading floors for investment banks. He had the money, the lifestyle, the whole package.
So how does an analytical guy like that lose his fortune and become a kidnapper?
He essentially self-destructed. The pressure of that lifestyle brought out the absolute worst in him. He developed severe alcohol and drug habits, which drained his finances and just amplified this notoriously explosive temper he had.
Right, I read he had a conviction for air rage.
Yeah, he aggressively threatened people on a flight, and he had a documented history of domestic violence. And as he lost everything, he was consumed by shame.
Just couldn't handle the fall.
Right. So to cope, he started adopting this wannabe gangster persona.
It sounds like Coates was a guy who built a penthouse, took an elevator all the way to the basement of the criminal underworld, but still demanded to be treated like he was on the top floor.
That is a perfect analogy. He demanded fear and respect that he hadn't earned. So when he gave his last 85,000 pounds to Lynda, he saw it as his ticket back to the top floor.
But then the masks come off. When Coates realizes Lynda's promises are a total fabrication, raw violence just takes over.
Yeah, it completely shatters his illusion.
Which brings us to the abduction. April 14th, 2011. Coates and his friend Philip Wade, who is basically his enforcer, they corner Lynda on the street in Broomhill, Glasgow.
Right, they just bundle her into a van. They're done with her excuses.
And they take her to an attic in West Kilbride. But they didn't do this alone. There were accomplices, David Parker, who owned the flat, and Paul Smith. They were paid 10,000 pounds to just babysit her.
Yeah, babysit.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. If the accomplices were just there to babysit, how does the psychology of a group like that work? How do ordinary people sit downstairs for 2 weeks while a medieval torture chamber operates in their attic?
Well, it's diffusion of responsibility, mixed with absolute terror. Parker and Smith claim they were initially hoodwinked, but once Wade showed up with what was essentially a torture kit.
Right, the bag with garden loppers, surgical tape, and vinyl gloves.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Once that started, they realized who they were dealing with. They convinced themselves they were just the landlords. They stayed downstairs because they were terrified they'd end up taped to a chair next to her if they intervened.
That is just wow. And the ordeal itself lasted 13 days. She was taped to a leather chair, forced to sit in her own waste, burned with an iron, hit with a golf club. They crushed her toes, and they actually severed her thumb and little finger.
It's just unimaginable cruelty.
And Coates is using her phone the whole time to trick her family into thinking she's alive. She was finally murdered around April 28th. But keeping a victim alive for 13 days to extract financial information for money that simply doesn't exist, it's a chilling contradiction.
It really is. It transitions from an extortion plot into pure sadistic revenge. He was punishing her for making him look foolish.
Yeah, right. But while all this horror is happening in the attic, there's a completely secret world operating in the background, a bureaucratic twist that is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, we have to talk about the SCDEA.
Right. Lynda was romantically involved with an Albanian criminal, Sokol Zafaj, who was suspected of drug trafficking and money laundering. And on March 11th, the SCDEA, basically Scotland's elite police unit, approaches her to inform on him.
And the timing is staggering. She is officially signed as a Covert Human Intelligence Source, a CHIS, on April 14th.
Wait, the exact same day she's abducted by Coates?
The exact same day.
That is, you can't write that. Can you explain what being a CHI actually entails? Because it sounds incredibly risky.
It is. The world of a CHIS is highly regulated. You're sanctioning someone to operate in the underworld. So the system requires strict risk assessments and dual handlers to prevent corruption.
Okay, so there are rules.
There are rules, but here the system created a fatal siloing of information.
Because her handler knew she was missing within 48 hours.
Right.
But the local Strathclyde police, the ones actually investigating her disappearance, were kept completely in the dark.
Exactly. The elite unit held onto vital context, while local detectives started from absolutely nothing.
It's like a tragic corporate miscommunication, but instead of losing a file, a woman loses her life because the elite spy division won't pick up the phone to the local homicide detectives.
Yeah. And it caused a huge uproar. Politicians like MSP Lewis MacDonald were calling for full reviews into how police manage chaotic informants.
As they should, because it severely hindered the murder investigation, which meant when this finally went to trial in 2013 at the High Court in Glasgow, the justice system had a massive problem.
A 10-week, 46-day trial, and they had to prosecute without a body.
Right, because Coates and Wade burned the chair, replaced the floorboards, bleached the whole attic. They only found a single spot of Lynda's blood.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, in Scottish law, you need corroboration. You need two distinct sources of evidence. Securing a murder conviction without a body, relying on admitted accomplices, is incredibly rare and difficult.
So the breakthrough was Parker and Smith, the babysitters, flipping for lesser 11-year sentences.
Yes, but even then, getting others to testify against Coates was a nightmare. People were terrified.
But they did get testimony. John Glenn claimed Coates showed him Lynda's severed thumb in a supermarket bag.
Yeah, just horrific arrogance.
And Tony Kelly said Coates referred to her body as seafood.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
And the judge saw right through Coates. He got a minimum of 33 years. Wade got 30 years.
And Coates was just arrogant to the end. When he was handed a Proceeds of Crime Act order, he literally sneered and said, "Oh, thanks very much." And they both kept committing offenses in prison. Phones, weapons, ordering hits.
Yeah, they learned nothing. And despite police searches as recently as 2022 in Dunoon, Lynda has never been found.
So what does this all mean? Looking at the public reaction on Reddit, some people victim blame Lynda because she was a scammer. But doesn't the fact that Coates was willing to torture someone for 13 days prove that she didn't create a monster? She just accidentally bumped into one.
Absolutely. Her crimes were financial, but Coates possessed a capacity for extreme, calculated violence. The underworld isn't just a movie trope. It's a very real place where everyday greed spirals into inescapable violence, and where the people supposed to protect you might be looking the other way.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought for you to ponder. If the SCDEA hadn't approached Lynda Spence with the promise of making her an intelligence asset, would a desperate con artist have just fled the country on her own? Did the very police apparatus designed to protect society ironically anchor her to the exact spot where her killers were waiting?
It's a really haunting question.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.